Hi and welcome to this week's 5-minute masterclass. This week I want to talk to you about emotional harm, and particularly emotional harm in relation to domestic abuse and emotional harm that is caused to children as a result of domestic abuse between parents, and particularly or a parent and their partner. I have lost count of the number of cases I have dealt with where domestic abuse is a huge feature in the case, and the local authority has reached the point where actually the work they've been doing hasn't been enough to prevent parents from continually causing that emotional harm, and so the only outcome left is to look at physically removing the children from that situation by way of placing them either with an extended family member, so they're out of either parent's care, or placing them into local authority foster care. In terms of emotional harm, it's one of the most difficult types of harm to prove, yet it's probably the most debilitating and the most significant harm that can be caused to a child. There's research that says that up to 90% of children in a domestic abuse relationship end up being affected by that abuse. And if you think and remind yourselves of the statistics around domestic abuse, such as 1 in 3 women will be affected in their lifetime, 2 women a week are killed, 1 in 6 men are also domestically abused, plus the plethora of statistics in relation to the LGBT community, and also elder abuse in terms of domestic abuse between elder people. So there's a number of ways that children can be impacted by domestic abuse whilst they're in a very young age. And as I say, it's one of the hardest areas to prove, and yet can manifest itself in any number of ways that you might see on a day-to-day basis. So, firstly, emotional harm, what is it? Well, emotional harm is the harm that's caused to a child's well-being and their ability to deal with matters on an even keel, to deal with matters rationally, or basically to simply have their welfare needs met by way of having a steady parent, a steady carer to meet those particular needs. So how can it affect them? Well, for children, particularly young children, if you have a parent who is a particularly coercive or controlling personality, then they may look at pledging their allegiance to that person. They may see that person as somebody that needs to be feared, or somebody that has a lot of control around what they do or do not do during the day. And they control a lot of their environment. And they may see the other parent controlled by that. And it can then follow that these children end up in a very unstable situation, not knowing what's happening with their primary caregiver. That primary caregiver's instructions may well be undermined by the other party in terms of their coercive and controlling behaviour. Worse still, you could see that children, very young children, maybe age 7 or 8, particularly boys, start to get involved where their primary caregiver is being harmed by the partner. So you could have situations where children are jumping on a parent to remove them, or they are actually stopping the caregiver from contacting the police because of the control that's happened in the family. So they may do things such as hide a mobile phone, may pass information to the other parent because they get rewarded in some way. They see that as a positive thing, and that's the role model that they are aspiring to replicate. And that is what will happen to them if that cycle isn't broken. So in terms of the emotional harm that can be suffered, it can cover any number of things. And it is one of the hardest to prove, as I've said, but it isn't impossible. And to do so, it's watching a child's behaviour, it's looking at the sorts of things that are happening in the home, and your records could be really crucial in dealing with this. So in conclusion, in terms of this week's masterclass, I want you to take away from this that emotional harm can occur quite significantly within a domestic abuse relationship. And if you work with children and you know this is happening in the family home, or you get that inkling, be aware that the underlying impact could be much, much more than physical harm that's going on. And if you do suspect that there's much, much more going on, then use your procedures, speak to EDT, speak to social services, and let them know your concerns, because it's only in building the bigger picture that these children can be protected in the long term. Until next week.